देश में ये लॉकडाउन 21 दिन का होगा। वर्तमान की मर्यादा है 2 गज की दूरी, मास्क है जरूरी।
Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. I am Akhilesh Suman and you are watching Special Report. In this episode of Special Report, we will take you through India's foreign policy journey in the year 2020 and its major contours. Indian foreign policy in 2020 marked an exciting beginning, building upon the achievements of 2019. Till the COVID-19 pandemic derailed all normal diplomatic practices, but it proved to be a temporary roadblock. Let's see how Indian diplomatic practices reasserted itself in robust manner, and we will begin the story with USA.
In 2020, the month of February became special for the India government at the center. It was a time when US President Donald Trump visited India with wife Melania, daughter Ivanka and son-in-law Jared Kushner. Although it was the last year of Trump's presidency, it marked the culmination of the strategic bonhomie and unanimity of worldview of both countries and its leaders.
I think President Trump's visit was a game-changing event. It consolidated the Indo-US partnership, particularly the strategic content of it. President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, the chemistry was excellent. And as a result of that visit, during the year, the relationship continued to prosper.
Trump was not the first US president to come to India, but his visit was historic. In part because he addressed the public directly.
Namaste. Namaste.
In a defining visual, Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi addressed people together in a huge stadium in Ahmedabad. Given the fact that Donald Trump had never addressed such a huge crowd, the event, named Namaste Trump, marked a warmth rarely seen between two world leaders. The picture sent out a clear message that in the current world order, India and the US had chosen to sail together.
Symbolic, and they leave an impression on the mind of the people that the two countries are together, the leadership are working together, and it also signals that the US is a friend of India and would help India.
In 2020, India and the US signed the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement for Geospatial Cooperation. This was the continuation of the Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement signed in 2016 and the Communications Compatibility and Security Arrangement in 2018. These three agreements together allow India and the US to work together in crucial areas of strategic importance. Trump visited Sabarmati and Agra, where he expressed delight with the arrangements for his visit. No wonder then that the summit meeting of Prime Minister Modi and the US President became a meeting of minds. It paved the way for a stern message being issued from New Delhi against terrorism and the unilateral approach of Beijing in South China Sea.
In Delhi, I also got a chance to ask questions to President Donald Trump regarding USA-India relations and terrorism. And let's hear what he said. Mr. President, I am Akhilesh Suman. I am from Rajya Sabha Television. It's a parliamentary channel of India, upper house, like you've seen it. Good. India's concern is with neighborhood. And you and Prime Minister Modi tell that you are very good friends. What is your strategy about terrorism that is coming out from Pakistan to India? Because we had been suffering from this type of terrorism for last 20 years or so. What is your strategy? What are you going to do?
We discussed at great length terrorism, and I think we have some very good ideas. He's very, very strongly against terrorism. I'll tell you, Prime Minister Modi is he's a very religious man, as you know. He's a very calm man. But he's actually a very, very strong person, very tough, actually. When I've seen him in action. And he's got that foremost in his mind, terrorism. He'll take care of it.
His visit in 2020 strengthened the Indo-US resolve to work jointly in the Indo-Pacific region. Ahead of the US elections on October 27th, US President Donald Trump sent two aides, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and then Secretary of Defense Mark Esper to India. This became the third 2+2 meeting between the defense and foreign ministers of both the countries. The agreement on geospatial cooperation was part of Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement to expand information sharing between our armed forces. This cooperation is intended to provide huge real-time data about movement of enemies.
Enhances the interoperability between the forces of India, armed forces of India and the US. So the two sides can operate jointly in the theaters of interest, and that enhances and multiplies the effectiveness of joint operations. So potentially, Indian and the US armed forces and their equipment and their people can communicate with each other, exchange information, and deal with the situations more effectively.
Even before the US elections on 3rd November, India made it clear that Indo-American relations are beyond parties. Democrat candidate Joe Biden won the US presidential race. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar reiterated that India-US relations have evolved over time, and with Biden as the president, mutual relations will attain newer heights. Prime Minister Modi was among the first world leaders to greet Biden even before the final results could be announced in the USA.
Meanwhile, India did not forget Russia. Both countries enjoy a friendship and a depth of relations that has stood the test of time. And in year 2020, it continued like that.
Year 2020 started with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov arriving in New Delhi to hold talks with his Indian counterpart S. Jaishankar. According to the Ministry of External Affairs, there was a detailed exchange of views on key regional and international issues, including the situation relating to Iran, Syria, and Libya. Foreign Minister Lavrov briefed his Indian counterpart on priorities for Russia as current chair of BRICS and SCO, whose summit meetings would be held in Russia in July this year. External Affairs Minister accepted Foreign Minister Lavrov's invitation to participate in the next RIC meeting to be hosted by Russia. The Russian Foreign Minister also addressed the Raisina dialogue in Delhi. While Russia appreciated the defense cooperation between the two countries, there were reservations on India's position in the Indo-Pacific, but they didn't come in the way of fulfilling its commitment to India's defense technology. From Russia, India was getting the S-400 missile defense system, Kilo-class submarine for Navy, and T-90s battle tanks. These deals that were initiated over the last 2 years faced reservations from the US, but India refused to be swayed. It signed 14 more MOUs during the DEF Expo 2020 on 21st February 2020. These agreements related to the development and production of land, air and naval systems and high-tech civilian products. In all, defense deals between India and Russia were set to cross $16 billion. This included the production of Kalashnikov rifles and Kamov helicopters. Rosoboronexport signed deals with DRDO for advanced pyrotechnic ignition systems, HAL for the export of spares and services to allies, and BHAL for land systems. A joint venture between Russian Helicopters and Indo-Russian Helicopters Limited envisaged production components used in Kamov Ka-226 helicopters in India. India is also planning to purchase 200 Ka-226 helicopters. Besides this, Russia was also the largest foreign contributor at DefExpo 2020. Further, India signed a 1500 crore rupees deal with Russia to procure R-27 air-to-air missiles to be mounted on Sukhoi 30 MKI combat aircraft. This deal boosts India's capability in beyond visual range warfare.
We have asked for certain specific supplies. They are coming. We have asked for expediting the S-400 delivery. That also is being considered and looked at if it's possible. So I think overall the relationship stays at the same level, both the political as well as the defense relationship stays at the same level to which Mr. Modi and Putin agreed in May 2018.
Russia was also the first country where both External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and Defense Minister Rajnath Singh went in person to Moscow to take part in the SCO and BRICS ministerial meetings.
When Rajnath Singh and Jaishankar, both of them went to Moscow for meetings in the RIC format, there were some good meetings they had with their Russian counterparts and very positive. The Russians also offered us Moscow as a platform where we could directly meet the Chinese. Incidentally, Moscow did not attempt to mediate, which is a good thing because I think all problems between India and China should be resolved in a bilateral dialogue. But Moscow was a good place for both defense ministers as well as foreign ministers to meet and have a face-to-face chat.
India and Russia held naval and military exercises in the COVID period in the Bay of Bengal and other places.
All the relationship stays at the same level, both the political as well as the defense relationship stays at the same level to which Mr. Modi and Putin agreed in May 2018.
In 2020, India's relationship with France was at an all-time high. It was a time when France delivered its first consignment of Rafale jets to India. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh went in person to France to receive the planes. Towards the end of 2020, India invited British Prime Minister Boris Johnson to attend India's Republic Day parade as the chief guest on 26th of January 2021. The British Secretary of State came to Delhi to accept the invitation. In turn, he invited Prime Minister Modi for the G7 meeting. Britain and India decided to strengthen their relationship in the post-COVID and post-Brexit period.
Britain is also supportive of our Indo-Pacific policy, and therefore I think our relationship with Britain can only improve. Also, we have very strong diaspora connections. Yeah, it's a long history. So the relationship with Britain will improve.
Among P5 nations, India's relations with China hit the lowest in recent times. Everyone feels that Chinese behavior was not according to the decorum of a friendly neighborhood and also unlike a big power.
The trouble was triggered by China when its troops encroached the line of actual control on the Indian side in Finger 4 areas. Chinese soldiers violated all established norms and agreements by provoking clashes in the Galwan Valley, where 20 Indian soldiers were killed. China's unpardonable actions came at a time when talks were underway between the two countries at various levels. India kept tactical restraint. On the other hand, while the government speeded up its defense acquisitions, it also ordered the army to prepare for any eventuality, capture tactical posts. It also maintained talks to tackle the belligerent behavior of China diplomatically. The international community also put China in the dock. While no country condoned China's behavior in Galwan Valley, most of them supported India's position on border issues with China. India also cracked down on China in the economic sphere. It started by banning most of the mobile apps that were owned by Chinese companies. Indian public opinion also hardened against Chinese goods.
Well, so far our response has been good in the sense that we have not bitten the bait. We are trying to resolve the issue through diplomacy. And I think our approach has been very realistic.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced the concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat or self-reliant India. The government convinced the world that a self-reliant India stands for a platform that will facilitate manufacturing and investing in India. This solved two purposes. One, it isolated China on unlawful trade practices. At the same time, it created a confidence in the world that India can take on China on global issues.
India responded by giving a strong signal to China that it will not be business as usual. Ironically, Chinese provocation had come at a time when India was trying to cooperate with China in COVID-19 period.
The COVID-19 pandemic marked the disruption of a millennium. The virus that surfaced in Wuhan province was seen at first as a local illness of China. But by the time it had spread to Italy, the situation became alarming. People were dying in huge numbers. India had a major diplomatic challenge on its hands. The situation called for unprecedented measures to save citizens both abroad and within the country. India closed its borders. Air, sea and land routes were shut. Massive preparations began to evacuate Indians trapped in other countries that were under lockdowns. India first evacuated Indians from Wuhan and other places through the Vande Bharat mission. Air bubble arrangements were made for bilateral exchanges of people from international points.
In terms of numbers, as on 22nd December, more than 40 lakh people have been facilitated under this Vande Bharat mission. And you would also know that due to emerging COVID-19 situation and the ensuing travel restrictions, there have been temporary suspension of Vande Bharat flights from the UK. Ministry is closely monitoring the situation.
The pandemic brought world diplomacy to a standstill for some time. Lockdowns in most countries ended the movement of diplomats. Physical meetings were restricted. Even masked, close conversations among diplomats ceased. Foreign diplomats in India found it difficult to talk to Indian officials in Delhi or elsewhere. Indian diplomats realized the danger of the impending disconnect. They correctly understood that the prudent course of action would be to engage with a world that the pandemic was forcing to remain distant.
In COVID-19 pandemic period, India found its way around it with digital diplomacy. That was rare and auxiliary in diplomacy till now. And actually, it was assisted by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who persuaded the whole world to apply and use this new mode of exchange.
India took a robust initiative of urging virtual meetings for diplomatic consultation. Prime Minister Modi announced that the Sark Summit could be held through video conferencing. That was facilitated on 15th of March 2020. The Sark Summit was the first virtual multilateral meeting during the COVID-19 pandemic. Other than Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan, all other heads of governments took part in the innovative initiative of Prime Minister Modi. A Corona Fund was created and India sent medical teams to Sark members and other countries.
In this COVID-19, you cannot have a physical meeting, and that was the urgency or emergency to have a COVID-19 fund. So what Prime Minister Narendra Modi had opted a virtual platform to invite all the heads of the SAARC countries to generate a COVID-19 fund for the South Asian countries. So it was basically his re-emphasis of regional approach towards resolutions of the problems like health issues, like poverty.
India also dispatched medicines like hydrochloroquine, azithromycin and paracetamol to needy nations. In times of pandemic, India became the pharmacy of the world. Prime Minister Modi mooted the idea of virtual meeting to G20 chair Saudi Arabia Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. It was accepted. The move marked the start of a new age summit-level meetings where India led the way. It became the global norm during the times of COVID pandemic.
Well, I think digital diplomacy is a very good beginning. It also ensured that despite travel restrictions, that the leaders were able to discuss and talk to each other. But there are at times requirements when digital diplomacy is not enough. So you've seen visits from some of our leaders to Bangladesh, Nepal, and you've seen there has been an improvement after these visits.
From bilateral to multilateral fora, the experiment of Sark Virtual Summit led the way. Even UN went through the same mechanism for its annual General Assembly of Heads of Governments. In Latin America, Brazil came closer to India, showing convergence of thoughts and interests. At the very beginning of 2020, Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro visited India between 24th and 27th January 2020 for a summit meeting. He was accompanied by 7 important ministers and a large business delegation. Bolsonaro was also the chief guest at the 71st Republic Day parade. A bilateral India-Brazil Investment Cooperation and Facilitation Treaty was signed. It facilitated transfer of ethanol technology to India from Brazil, which is leader in the sector.
You know, Brazil and India both are going through their own problems in terms of dealing with the coronavirus. Both have very strong economic considerations at home. We also have, the BRICS format in which we will continue our interactions. So I do not see Brazil-India relations declining, but it may take some time before we can talk about a positive movement forward and tangible, not a positive. There will always be positive movement forward, but about tangible movement.
Maldives emerged as a major ally in India's maritime neighborhood. At the same time, 2020 also found India-Bangladesh ties at an all-time high. Not surprisingly, among the Sark nations, only Pakistan remained isolated from India. While normal relations prevailed with Nepal despite some territorial issues, relations with Sri Lanka, Bhutan and Myanmar were on the upswing. India's Army Chief and Foreign Secretary visited these countries to assure them of help against the COVID pandemic.
We have started re-emphasizing or cultivating all our neighboring countries, including Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. You can see the way Indian Foreign Minister and Indian Foreign Secretary had visited all these countries to re-energize or rephrase the relationship between the two countries in the region, to develop a regional approach of all the concerns, issues, or common concerns.
India decided to embark on a new diplomatic initiative on the issue of Afghanistan by deciding to take part in peace talks even if it is attended by Taliban representatives. It was a new shift, but was fruitful. Along with Afghanistan, India's relations with Central Asian countries also deepened. As a matter of fact, they wanted us to be present in those regions for balance of power, development partnership, and peace. Similarly, with Vietnam, India's relations went more deeper, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi held summit-level talks at the fang end of this year with Vietnam Prime Minister.
While world foreign policy in 2020 was overshadowed by the COVID-19 pandemic, India evolved as a pharma hub. India showed its preeminence in the medical field by helping over 100 countries, both rich and poor, with medicines. It created a confidence in the world that persuaded many global manufacturers to enter into collaborations with Indian companies to produce vaccines. This was termed as India's pharma diplomacy. It was an example of what Prime Minister Modi meant when he called upon the world to turn the pandemic into an opportunity.
So, as far as India's foreign policy in 2020 is concerned, it will be remembered for winning over the crisis created by COVID-19 pandemic, exchanging more and more with the world, being friendly to the world and enemy to none, turning crisis into opportunity. That's all in this report from Akhilesh Suman with camera person Sanjay Kumar and assistant Riyasat Ali in Delhi for Rajya Sabha Television.
देश में ये लॉकडाउन 21 दिन का होगा। वर्तमान की मर्यादा है 2 गज की दूरी, मास्क है जरूरी।